Record on the. Well,
Got it.
hello there. Welcome.
Howdy, howdy.
Howdy, howdy. Welcome. This is 96.9 FM, KMRD, LP, Madrid, New Mexico. Disc jockey Jules here. Stephen Jules Rubin. Stephen Jules Otis Rubin. Metaphysical Biscuit. Sunday, Funday. Domingo, Chico. In el Ritmo de las Tres. The rhythm of threes. Very special guest. Honored, pleased, tickled. Adjectives could take up the entire time, but let's not do that. Brent Cobb.
Hello. Hello there. Thanks for having me. Adjectives could take up the whole time, couldn't they?
They could, and there's a lot of great things to say about you. But let's chat and let these listeners, your fans, new fans, old fans, get to know you. And thanks a lot for doing this. Oh boy, old buddy, can I say that?
Oh, buddy. Yeah, that's my own record label name is Oh Buddy. And
Yeah.
yeah, of course. I just appreciate, man, I spent so many years of people not caring that I'm always welcoming and grateful when anyone like yourself or whoever does care. So thank you for taking the time.
Well, back at you. Caring is a good thing to do. I think that might be one thing about maturity, and you sing about this a little bit. I'm not much for this growing up, but that's one thing is learning compassion, caring, how to get through, right?
No doubt.
And
Yeah,
you,
man. I mean, that may be the key ingredient to this whole world is if we could just all care a little bit, you know, and or care about things that maybe we should and not care so much about things that we shouldn't.
if I can
Try to get
remember,
along.
I'll coach you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of your songs is "Keep 'Em on Their Toes." That gets a little philosophical.
Mm.
Um, I would think, in my opinion. But that is actually one thing that occurred to me, and maybe we can get right into juicy and then get some details. Is less of a question, and I don't really think of these things as interviews so much as just sharing. But anyways, I guess back in the day, you might have been in the outlaw country. Now it's Americana, whatever, with the labels. But my point really more is seems a little bit like, you know, I've seen where you list your influences of these, the Guy Clarks and all those wonderful people, but there's a
Sure.
little bit more in this era as times change and not just music, but since you're a musician, of being a little bit able to be more open, if that makes any sense, a little more sensitive and I feel that in your music, where you get that mix, like Hayes Carll and others. You can be funny, you sing about partying and ladies and drinking, and then you'll drop something deep about life. So
All right. Yeah. Well, uh, I don't think it's so is yeah, I agree with you. Nowadays, there was a span of time, um, way back in the day, you know, I'd say like in the early days of radio and stuff, like the 50s and 60s especially, you had things weren't as controlled and they were more sort of like what you're doing or like what I'm doing. They were more independent and people just did it because they loved it. And you could have an opinion about things that, there was nobody with money over your head going, you got to think this, or whatever. And people did it for the love of it. And yeah, I think we've reached that freedom again. It's been a long time coming. When I first started professionally, it was 2005, 2006, and even at that time, radio was still king, or queen or whatever, and you would not be heard for the most part if you were not some way involved with radio. And but then it was also right as streaming really started taking a hold and people started discovering their music through the internet. And you know, with that, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? As a songwriter, the streaming uh services, it kind of it's terrible. But then as a independent artist who writes and records my own music, it's wonderful because I actually have a fan base now, and people are able to discover my music, and but because of that, also it gives the power to independents who just want to write what they want to write about, and it gives, and they're able to, and then you are able to find like-minded people, and it's a terribly wonderful thing.
Sure.
It's yeah, it's double-edged for sure.
Well, in some ways, that sounds like life, doesn't it?
Absolutely, ain't it, man? Yeah, we gotta, yeah, it is like life. We gotta keep them on their toes. That's what that whole song is about. Is you know doing what we feel like we have to do and what we need to do, and over what we want to do or what someone else thinks we should do.
Right. Especially the last one. I always get the words former and latter messed up, but what other people want us to do, that would be one good thing about growing up, is
Oh
getting,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah.
To get back to the growing up thing, yeah.
We
To
don't, we don't need to talk about that. But although that's the song of yours that starts off with, isn't that the one that starts off with the line?
if you ever grow up,
Yeah, I love it.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, if, you
If
know.
you ever grow up, because that is the thing. If you could ever grow up, it is. It's. We can't cuss on this station, and I don't know if we can talk about psychedelics and stuff like that. But
Yeah, we can.
if
Just
it,
the words, yeah.
yeah, but if you know, it's a shame, isn't it, that people get so stuck on trivial things
Yeah.
instead of the other things that have been made to seem trivial, like caring about people. Doesn't seem like it would be that trivial.
It shouldn't be.
But it shouldn't be. And yeah, it's something. Yeah, I have a daughter who's 9. I have a son who's 4, and they can get so. These kids are ruthless, man. Kids can be so mean to each other for
Yeah.
nothing.
For nothing.
And I'm not the type of parent that goes, "Oh, my child is an angel." But uh, my kids are kids, and they believe in people, and they believe in themselves, and they're just trying to have for other friends, and in this climate, especially as kids, um, they these other kids just find whatever they're whatever, if they have a problem with themselves, they're going to project that onto their fellow student. And it does take a lot of growing up, I think, to not care what everybody else is thinking, and be confident in your own steps and in this walk of life. And I wrote that song when my son was born,
Hmm.
and but it wasn't just for him, it was for me as well. I try to live that way. I try to go, well, I didn't ask for this life, I didn't give it to myself, so I definitely can't take it from myself. And I'm going to do the best I can to you know try to treat others the way I'd like to be treated, and
Hmm.
and do what I want to do, as long as I ain't hurt nobody.
Yeah. Please tell the man I didn't hurt anyone.
Yeah, daggum. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I try to live by the creed that a lot of people don't, obviously. And since you did mention social media, and I was gonna also say one upside, and I'll add because Metaphysical Biscuit, the name of this part of the name of the show here on 96.9 FM, is the implication I've come up with that should, I joke, whether it's the voices in my head if I don't have a guest, or in this case, if somebody thinks of something, go ahead and say that. Don't try to get back to the other thought because we never will. But
Mm.
chances are we might if we don't try. But anywho, and wanted to toss out there with the psychedelics comment. We'll get back to that because you've talked about other things and your songs. But Madrid, New Mexico, where this is based out of, though a lot of listeners, you've got fans on each coast listening, and we stream, and hopefully with your permission, the Zoom will go up later. But anyways, point was Madrid, depending on how you want to say it, is on the old Highway 14 if you haven't been around there, and
Okay.
and I was gonna joke could be that 90% of the people in Madrid listening are on psychedelics right
Yeah,
now.
man. I I've spent a little bit of time in New Mexico. In 2013 I played was it like the Northwest New Mexico State Fair or something? It was right outside Las Cruces.
Okay, southern, yeah.
So is that what it was? Maybe it was the
Las
Southwest.
Cruces is southern New Mexico, yeah, but
Okay. Well,
hot.
uh man, it was beautiful though. We were on the way back. We rode through the desert, and it was the first time maybe in my life that I ever got to witness the sphere of the atmosphere when we stopped on the side of the road and
Big
and,
sky.
and at night, man, it was just magical and
Yeah.
mystical. And I love it out there, man. I really do. And I was probably also on psychedelics that night.
That's all right. That's all right. That's good. We Mary Gauthier and Jamie Harris, who also did a Zoom. They played February, and I didn't know much about. He had been with Rise. What was his name? That's really bad of me. They were on tour with the other couple, bluegrass guy. And anyways, they introduced a song. I'm like, as soon as I don't try to think of his name, I probably will.
Yeah.
Anyways, my point was just that that in a church they were playing, as a matter of fact, downtown, and they introduced the song that they wrote at a campfire in New Mexico on psychedelics. So we're pretty open here.
Nice. Yeah, it seems that way. Feels that way.
Not to
I
mention the
like
whole,
it.
yeah, not to mention the whole alien thing, which you probably heard a little bit about.
Yeah, that's a big deal out there. Yeah,
Yeah, Roswell. Yeah.
yeah,
so
yeah.
so this I was going to ask, but generally that's what happens is I don't have to. This the second time you're going to be in New Mexico. Was that the one?
Oh no, for sure not. I just remember that because that was my first time. But I've been to New Mexico um several times. I probably wouldn't be able to recall specific times, but I've toured for almost 20 years,
Right.
and we've been all over. Yeah,
Yeah, a lot of times tours, sometimes it takes a while for artists to get through our little,
for
Colorado
sure.
or Albuquerque. But I thought you had been. Have you played Santa Fe that you remember? Our little
Yeah,
team?
yeah. I played Santa Fe, and then isn't Santa Fe? Is that where Sonic Ranch is?
Yeah, the which ranch?
Sonic Ranch, the studio. I think it's in Santa Fe.
Oh, it might have changed names, but there's a few little studios. Yeah,
Well,
I'm not.
no. It's right on the border,
Okay. Oh, I
and
think I know what you mean. Yeah.
yeah, and I produced an album on the Wilder Blue there in December last year,
Oh, just
and man, it's such a cool area, man.
yeah.
Just
Yeah, it's beautiful, especially, the big old skies and all. But of course, you're from a beautiful, in a very different way, part of the world, right? Georgia.
yeah, it's I'm from like the area of Georgia that is, you know, there's not a whole lot going on. It's very rural, desolate, and I'm from Southwest Central Georgia, with like an hour south of Macon, Georgia,
Okay.
and but we do have a rich history of uh, you know, soul, like Southern soul music. We sort of like where I'm from, that area, artists from that area influenced the whole world of music. The Otis Redding is from Macon, Georgia, and then you have Little Richard, also from Macon, Georgia, which is already like what?
That's it. You
And
could
then
stop there. Yeah.
I know, but then if you go 30 minutes down the road from where I'm from in Albany, Georgia, you have Ray Charles is from there, and then right up the road you have James Brown from Augusta, and it's very, and of course, the Allman Brothers, and that whole area, man, is like Southern soul, it's country soul music.
What if Dwayne Allman had lived longer? It's
Dude,
hard not to wonder.
or Otis Redding.
Or Otis.
Yeah,
Oh,
dude.
oh well.
Man, I didn't realize this until not long ago, but like sitting on the dock of the bay,
Yeah,
was that was posthumously released,
I figured.
Otis Redding, and and he made mention. I ran into his daughter, Miss Carla, 2 weeks ago,
Is that
and
right?
I went by the Otis Redding Foundation, and we got to talk for a long time. And they're just all such great human beings. And but I read a thing where she said that Otis said that sitting on the dock of the bay was a little different direction for him musically and lyrically. Like typically he didn't write those kind of things. It wasn't about just love, and this, between two people. And and if you consider it, it's a little bit more in the country realm. And so, man, I wonder what he would have written had he had the plane not crashed.
I know. Well,
It would have been the coolest country soul ever.
yeah, yeah. That blows me away every time I see that he didn't even see Dock of the Bay or hear it released, much less what happened to it. Yeah.
That's what was so cool about hanging out with his daughter the other week and his grandchildren. Um, I was able to, when I walked in, so they run the Otis Redding Foundation there in Macon, and I walked in and I had met his grandson before, but I didn't know if he would recognize me. And I bought a couple of new T-shirts, new Otis Redding T-shirts, and I said, man, I don't know if you remember me. We met once, but uh, my name's Brent Cobb. And he said, I thought that was you. And he went and got his mom, Miss Carla, and she was 7 when Otis's plane crashed. Her dad's plane crashed,
Mm,
and I have a 9-year-old daughter, and
mm.
I often, when I'm gone so much touring, I do worry about, what kind of effect that has emotionally on my kids. And um, it was so cool to be able to talk to that lady and sort of have someone who was lived it. And she made the comment because I was like, it's so hard, on me. It's hard on my kids to be gone. And she said, yeah, I know. And then imagine not being able to come home, which is what happened with her dad. And I already do. I think about it every day.
I'm
And
sure.
but anyway, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent there. I just what a beautiful, amazing family. And yeah, I wish he could have heard Doc of the Bay, and I wish that we could all have heard what he would have come up with had he lived longer.
Yeah. No, the tangents are the best part, and I don't have kids, but I'll show you. I'm showing them listeners.
Hey, what do you say, kitty?
Yeah, that's right, little buddy. And look what he's got his drink over there. He loves your stuff. That's Stanley, and Stella's in the bedroom. I was gonna joke. Don't tell Hayes, but Stella during the alone together, Hayes and Allison knew we had a running joke. The girl cat Stella, who's in bed right now, we joked she had a crush on Hayes. She would come out and but now she that we've been playing you, she said she you're her number
I'm
one.
the one.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I mean
I am gonna tell Hayes that
yeah, you can tell him.
actually.
He'll get over. He'll be
Yeah,
like,
man.
I was there with that Jules guy.
We just got our first cat. I grew up with cats. My wife did not, and so we never had a family cat since I've been married and have kids. And man, my daughter went outside. She was at my folks' house, her grandparents, and this little kitten just walked up out of the woods.
Yeah.
I don't even know how it got there, and and they, it was a love at first sight. And up until that point, my daughter had been obsessed with wolves. She really wanted some wolves, and wanted to go. She wanted some, yeah, and some canines, and we already have a couple dogs. Well, then this cat showed up, man, and she's the coolest little cat I've seen in a long time. We named her Lila. My daughter named her Whiskers, and she is just awesome. She hunts all the time, and my wife had never been able to embrace an indoor cat like that,
Hmm.
and she just they're like buddies now. They hang out, late night, and she gets to see the love of a cat. There's nothing quite like the love of a cat.
There isn't. And before you mentioned however you started this little tale, I was thinking I bet you the daughter's involved, and that's probably helpful, with you being on the road, living that life, at least, But I was also going to show this other
What's
shirt.
up? That's
So maybe
perfect.
other than mentioning,
Yeah, so lit.
you're so lit, right?
Right now.
Yeah, and other than mentioning, we both have the word bourbon and whiskey on our shirt. Um, yours is different. Anyways, a good way to segue. That was my "So Lit Right Meow" shirt, listeners, which they've heard about in previous episodes. Anyway, I've heard you talk a little bit and songs, and again with the idea of things changing. Tyler Childers having just put out that considered first song openly about a gay couple that he got gay. Margot Price's whole thing, and Sturgill having a song about psychedelic haze, a little more political. Anyway, you back to you. Of I heard a story the other day, last night probably. You told and then you're on about I think it was sort of religion, mushrooms, finding God, other ways. You know what I'm talking about that you were saying.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I was just saying that I think this is what you're talking about is uh well, I've had several experiences on psilocybin, but
Hmm.
two or three that were profound and that were like sort of changed my life, and really all they did was just brought me back to what I knew. It just confirmed what I thought I knew as a kid, really, which is that we're just all here to try to love each other the best we can. And um you know I think this is what you're referencing, but is sometimes we all get lonely in life, and I caught you know I caught a moment in time where I was connected. I was a part of the old world that wasn't as connected, quote, connected as this world, where everybody constantly, you know, are stimulating their brains and feeling connected even when you're there alone. And when I was growing up, if you were alone, you were completely alone, and you just had to live in your loneliness, and and for a time until you saw a friend, and in the real world, and or is it the real world? And and uh, and so I think that was healthy. Like we all get down and we get lonely and we'll sometimes get depressed, and but I think that's okay to let the silence creep in and consume the moment, and versus being lonely and alone and tricking your mind with through technology into thinking that it isn't alone, like through social media or through what we have all of our friends on our in our phone on our hip pocket. We can text everybody all the time, or be texted and made contact with all the time. I think that it's all right to be lonely. I think that it's and I would say psilocybin was the first thing that really I already knew that, but then after my experiences more, I was like, oh yeah, it's all right. We're just kind of drifting through here. We're all going in this one direction. None of us have any control over it, and we should embrace it. And that means embrace the loneliness. And then it's okay to like let loneliness make you happy, or be happy. Find happiness in your loneliness if you can, and just sit and be still and wait for the next moment to occur.
Yeah, yeah, you actually got to several things that I had sort of typed in my little notes while I was listening to your stuff the last few nights, because I love that. I haven't quite heard that articulated so well of what you just said of it not going further than it's okay to be lonely. It can be good, accepted.
Sure.
It brings me to a parallel in the acting world. Alan Arkin, who just passed away, who lived here, would do these workshops, and in 2 days you felt your life change, improv, and he
Mm.
would, and but it's completely. parallel to what we're talking about, which we're talking about with the growing up that I was thinking but didn't quite articulate of, and real world. All these things are things that like are in my daily brain and conversations and whatever.
Sure.
So to try to succinctly get it out is whether it's medicinal, music, whatever, and you've talked about spirituality and religion, I believe. Whatever it is, if we're in that state that you're kind of describing, and I don't mean adult, I mean that state of compassion and listening, right? That and just that's the good side of growing up, is what I was trying to say and thinking
Sure.
earlier, versus that so-called real world side and all that. We don't even need to go there. We know what, right?
Yeah.
But anywho,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I think, done within that right moderation, and then of course, there's Todd Snyder's, what's his line? Too much moderation. Great line.
Well,
But
yeah. I,
yeah,
I think anything that anybody does, if you do it with if you're not hurting anybody, then what is the problem?
yeah,
I
doesn't
think that everybody should be free to just live and all float, drift in that direction that we're talking about, that we have no control over.
yeah,
And that's where I land.
yeah. You'll probably get a kick out of
Well,
this.
oh, that's the other thing,
Yeah,
and it can be induced by psychedelics. Or there was a time that I was praying before I ever tried any psychedelics. I reached that same level of, you know went to the other side, man. I was tripping. And I came to the same conclusion. Like that, I left. I had complete ego death, as they say, and just through you, I it was praying for me, but it might be meditation for someone else. Whatever it is, it's real, and more real than what this is. When you experience it, you know that it's the most real.
yep, yep. I gave my flesh a pinch to indicate that's one real, but you're talking about the real, real, and George Harrison's wonderful spirituality of, yeah, the body dies, but that don't, and there's a sadness when you miss somebody, but
Well, I read a very cool comment under a post where somebody had lost somebody, and I thought this was great. That grief is just love with nowhere to go, and I feel that, man. I've lost people in my life that I grieve every moment, really, of every day. Once you lose somebody,
mhm,
it doesn't really stop.
mm-mm.
But I love that. Like, I never thought of it that way. That, like, oh, that's just, if that person was still around, I could go see them and give them this love that I have for them, but they're no longer here. And so I don't have them to give that love to. And
Yeah.
so that is grief. And I, oh, another thing that I've thought about, because
Mhm.
I got T-boned in 2020, me and my young son. At the time, he was barely a year old.
Mm.
And it totaled my truck, broke my collarbone.
Oh,
He was totally unscathed. He was fine, but it made me think that every little thing that led to that moment of us happening to be at that four-way stop, that car ran the stop sign and T-boned us, and all the things that led to that moment. And it made me wonder if, like, um anytime we could have died, we did die, but then our consciousness just picks up on a real similar timeline to our own. And so then it made me wonder, every time we dream or if we have deja vu, is that this consciousness tapping into that other consciousness where our other self is, and it's endless possibilities of where that other self is. And even last night, I had two dreams that I was living in that moment. You pinched yourself a while ago.
is
I pinched myself in one of those dreams, and
that
it was
right?
real, you know. And I wound up waking here and in this consciousness, but I don't know, man. Maybe it goes on forever. I don't know anything.
No, we
I'm just
don't.
glad. I'm glad to be experiencing any of it though, at all, the
Right.
good and the bad.
Yeah, I do my best to take that. Obviously, we get nervous, we have doubts.
Sure.
Yeah, but just trying to let that all go because that's you said ego death. That's ego doesn't just mean I'm the greatest. There's more,
Yeah. Ego is just self awareness,
which
just
I may,
knowing that.
other than quoting paraphrasing Ali, I may never have said that phrase in my entire life. What I just said, I'm the greatest.
Yeah.
But uh, speaking of this handsome devil down here who's enjoying things, if not yesterday, the other morning in dreams, I woke up to the sound. I was like interacting with a sound in my dream. There was like mowing grass or something. It was him snoring out here with the bedroom door.
but in your other consciousness, you were mowing the grass.
Something was going down. Yeah. And then I woke up and as you start taking in the world, I was like, oh, I can hear Stanley snoring from all the way.
Wow.
Yeah, he's a noisy. He's a Maine Coon, by the way. So,
Yeah.
biggest cats there are that would sit at your feet at least.
Right.
um, uh, but I was gonna say you probably appreciate this little story. A while ago, Peter Fonda, who I got to meet a few times around here, film world, whatever, and all these cats come to town, whatever. Um,
Mhm.
and it's not. I'm not. I think fame is a silly invention. My listeners know that, so it's not about that. But at a big event at the Lensic Theater where Hayes has played, uh, that somebody asked, that it was packed, that they had done this biker parade. There's this photo of me on a trike with 150 Harleys. And anyways, someone asked him about drugs, and it ties in to what we were saying, where he says, and I'm going to do a bad Peter Fonda for amusing sake, well, man, if you're talking about heroin or something that ruins someone's life, that's a heavy trip, man. And he really said that. But he goes,
Wow.
but if you're talking about, well, and again, I can't curse, which I almost did. If you're talking about the stuff that grows in cow dung, that's all right. You take that, you have a good time, you giggle, you wake up a little confused, maybe think you have a cold, man. But it was a great.
It ain't hurting nobody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why when I thought of it when you said that,
Yeah.
and it just doesn't make sense. I know what you're saying. The other thing is I've heard you use the term roughly of a or anti-political, which I totally relate to. But it is that kind of stuff comes up. But it doesn't make any sense to legislate something that's if it's you're hurting only yourself, if you're even hurting yourself.
I concur.
Yeah.
It gets complex, but I concur.
It does. It does. It does get complex. But uh, but I think I meditate every morning. Of the things I'm addicted to, I do 20 minutes of TM and transcendental. And when I learned that, I come from a non-religious Jewish background and all African American communities. So, anyways,
Mhm.
and some Southern ties. And anywho, um, shucks, what was that?
Well, I'll pick up though right there. Yeah, I know you
Yeah, yeah.
probably have something else, but I was going to talking about African American. I grew up in a similar place where I'm from is you know white people are the minority,
Yep.
and I went to public schools my whole life, and man, the American South catches a bad rap, um, and not necessarily unrightfully so, but I will say out of every area in America, the states, the American South, we live with our sins, and then we grow up together, and we go to school together, and we work together, and we learn together, and we grow, and we eat, and we pray, and we do all these things together. Where there are a lot of communities that like to talk a bunch of trash about the American South, where actually we're all living together, and a lot of these places like to talk their trash. They never grew up around anybody other than what they look like,
Yep.
and I think that's why the American Southern music has influenced the whole world of music is because of that. Because we, for the most part, we go, damn, all this happened, but here we are still together.
Yeah.
and and so it's the greatest music in the world. There would be no music had it not been for the American South and for the trials and tribulations of the American South.
And for all the cultures coming together.
That's what I mean. It's a
Every,
melting pot. It's all everybody's together. It's
yeah.
all different. And yeah, it's
Great.
people who come from overseas, come from Europe to visit the States, they want to see three places. They want to see LA, they want to see New York, and they want to see the whole American South. Not just one place in the American South. They want to see all of the American South. And that's why it's it's uh it's beautiful, man. I mean, I don't just mean geographically. I mean, like, it's
Sure.
well, I said earlier, terribly wonderful. It makes it's there's nothing like it. you
I
know
agree. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and the thing is, to me, what I tell people, because you do hear that, yeah, and then I'm sorry, but Boston and other cities like that are racist. There was a brand new PBS doc on busing last night. Now it wasn't yesterday, but that's horrible. And to me, what I tell people is, no, the South, the difference too is you know where not to go. If
well, maybe, but also, like, uh man, nowadays in certain places, not of the South, sometimes in the South, but especially in, like, metropolitan areas, they the new word is gentrification.
right.
And what all that is segregation.
Mm,
And
yeah.
where the difference is, in these rural communities, specifically in the rural American South, that doesn't exist. We're just, we are all just living together. And man, you know it's, again, it's another one of those complexities. It's complex, it's complicated, but it's also not. When you're in it, when you're down there and you're in it, it's people. I grew up around people that were, on the surface, they liked to believe that they were openly racist, and but the truth is they're not. And they uh may have said things that anybody on the outside would go, that's racist, and it is, but they are not. Their heart isn't, and they are living and breathing and working and together with everybody, and they're, a lot of times. You remember that movie American History X?
Mm,
All right, American History X is a great example of what I'm trying to say, where this person, their whole life, have been made to believe that they had to feel a certain way about someone who was different than they were. And but they come to grow, and they realize they're not, and they don't feel that way. They don't hate these people. They love these people, and these people were the only people that loved them back, really. And that's how the American South is. And, like, as far as everybody isn't that way. A lot of people, like me, my family, we all grew up knowing, like, we knew that we were all working together, and that we're all living together, and that we're all together. We're just all the same. And, but understanding the history as well. And and we didn't, like, there are some people that, when they, like, if that is not discovered by themselves, that, like, oh shit, there isn't anything. I'm not articulating this well, but there are some people who don't realize, unless they realize themselves, then it's a shell that they put on. It's not real, man. It's like, it's the way they have been taught to think they have to be. But for the most part, even that doesn't exist in the American South. In the American South, everybody's together. In my experience, now, I also grew up in Jimmy Carter country. I'm 10 minutes down the road from Plains, Georgia.
yeah.
I grew up, again, an hour south of Macon,
Yeah.
and so it's possible that I grew up a bubble of the South. But I don't know, man. In my experience, um, American South gets talked a lot more. The American South gets a lot more trash talked on them than they are actually going through.
Yeah, yeah. You articulated that beautifully. I agree. Don't worry about the words. As a matter of fact, I'll make a joke here. I didn't air it yet, but the song that I just heard earlier, where you said you did a version without Nikki Lane, and you said you missed her, but there's one or two naughty words, and what I do instead of beep is I meow it out, and I have it ready to air in one of these coming weeks before your show, which
Nice.
let's get to details. September 1st in a sec in Santa Fe, but so I'll be able to do that with the couple words that you said. But yeah, I agree. I mean, yes, there's the history, and there's like I said, there's certain places, and you are talking about great places, but you know, and it's like Rhiannon Giddens, all that stuff. They talk about the Carolina Chocolate Drops of the banjo coming from Africa, and it's just
Totally.
that's the South. That's
Absolutely, man.
I hear you.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say, you said West Georgia, so that maybe isn't too far. Speaking of soul and music and changing the world, Muscle Shoals. That's not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally. That's right down the road.
Yeah, and that's just yeah. What was that? Was it you talking about somebody? I just saw talking about an early gig with Dylan. So was that you? Is this your
I don't
story?
know. I don't
And
know. Maybe.
I think it was, as a matter of fact. Yeah, didn't you? No, no, no. I'm sorry. It was an older person that Otis Gibbs had just shared. Anyway, you'll appreciate the story. That the person was moving out of Alabama, ended
Uh
up
huh.
a year in Chicago. That's what it was, and raising his kid for 20 years in Atlanta. Saw Dylan in Alabama, and everybody playing with Dylan was from Alabama in that tour because they were on Muscle Shoals. That's what it was.
That's what I'm talking about.
But yeah, and
Yeah,
Aretha.
man.
I mean, Dwayne Allman's Wilson Pickett and Aretha covers at Muscle Shoals. You can't. I mean, come on, right?
Yeah. Come on, man.
Come
I
on.
mean, well, yeah, and I keep going back to Otis Redding, but like Otis recorded at Stax a lot, but the whole reason he built his airstrip back home was because he didn't want to leave Macon anymore. The whole reason Capricorn Records exists is because of Otis Redding. It was originally called Redwall, which was Otis Redding and the Walden brothers, and they were managing him, and and they built that studio because of Otis. He wanted a place in his home to where when he wasn't touring, he didn't have to go somewhere else to record. He wanted to be around his family. He wanted to go ride his horses and he wanted to feed his chickens and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And and then when the plane crashed and he died, the Waldens felt wrong to use his name and call it Redwall because he wasn't a part of it anymore. And luckily, Mrs. Elma educated herself, his widow, and they were able to legally. There would be no Allman Brothers recordings that we know of now had it not been for Otis Redding.
Sure.
And anyway, this
Yeah,
man, I love the history of it all so much.
me too.
I'm not as well versed as I hope to be someday.
Well, keep at it. My memory doesn't help me,
Me either.
but what you're saying is there seems to be a parallel of a little bit out here, but Buddy Holly in Lubbock, and he had everything
Totally, man.
for a studio like that too.
Yep.
For whatever magical reason, without Buddy Holly getting that studio set up, the tradition of those singer songwriters, particularly out of Lubbock, carried on. But
Yep.
sometimes it's just something in the wind, or in that case, or where you're from, in the air, in the trees. I don't know. And I'm sure
Something in
it's
the water.
something in the water,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that it's a mystery as part of why it lasts. Maybe, right?
Yes.
Who knows? But some things we don't need to know. So logistical stuff. So first of all, you mentioned Capricorn Studios, right?
Mhm.
Is that where this new you're about to hit the road shortly, right? With your new album and tour, correct?
Yep, it's going to be Southern Star. It was recorded at Capricorn. You know, to shine a little bit of that light of the Southern Star on the history of Capricorn records, but then also people like Otis and Little Richard, and there's been so much music to come out of that area. And Capricorn isn't just a part of history; it's still active just as much now as it was then. So much so that I used all local to making musicians to make this album, who are Southern stars in their own light. And yeah, we recorded at Capricorn. The first time I stepped foot in there was 2017, and it was dilapidated and unsafe to walk into. And Mercer, the school, the college, had just purchased it, and they renovated it. And then over the last few years, it's a working operating studio. I wanted to show folks that, if you're like you and I are, and you care about the history of music and specifically the American South music, Capricorn would be on your list of places you'd like to experience. And uh, I wanted to show that you can just show up there with your songs. You don't need to bring an engineer, and you don't need to bring, your band and all that. You just show up, and they got it all going on at Capricorn.
Well, some of my listeners have heard my rants more about New York than LA, but I think we're on the same page with that. Um, uh, they
Yeah.
have points, but there's no center of the universe unless it's you. I don't, but these cities that think they are is ridiculous. And I don't. Oh, when you were mentioning those cities of people when they visit, and
Yeah.
you might have noticed. Obviously, they didn't unless they're if they're watching it. Anyways, I did sort of an eye roll, but to me, there's this thing where, in some ways, there's just city. I lived in Chile. It's just big city. There's traffic. There's those things that get in the way of the connection and the culture in a lot of ways.
uh
And then when you're talking
For
about,
sure.
and then sorry, last thing I was gonna say on that was when you're talking about New York. I have cousins in New York. I lived there briefly. I knew when to say. I still don't think. I'll leave it this way. I feel like New York is the only city on the planet, politics aside, that could have created somebody like the former president, the indicted president, you know,
Right.
with that unrestrained, that money, 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 and when you're in
Yes.
smaller communities, keyword community, right?
Mhm.
To me, that's where that get is better. And I was going to say too, last summer I went to my 30th high school reunion. My mom still lives in Baltimore, knowing I would be the only white dude there. So that was like part of
Mhm.
why I went. And it because this is skin. I'm pointing to my skin, not pinching, but this is nothing. This is just it doesn't.
Right.
It don't define us. I mean, particularly as you're growing up, of course, there's realities as such, but then, as you've said, then there isn't. And I guess maybe what we're tapping into is some sort of concept of growing up in a way. Hayes did that great cover of "I Don't Want to Grow Up," and your lyric that
Yeah.
you,
So good.
yeah, it is. Yeah, I love the version where he looks at the lyrics and messes up. Anyways,
There's probably I'm in that version. Probably.
are you? Oh,
No,
okay.
I don't know, but I'm in probably.
Well, I did. Your guys. Okay, there we go. Enough philosophizing for a second. That live stream y'all did, I was out of range and doing a show acting, so I saw some of it and watched it later. But y'all did a live stream about a year ago, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and that was
Yeah, we
hysterical.
did that whole little tour, and we would do. You was smoking on a cigarette, down, la, 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 and
Yeah,
yeah, it was awesome. What a great tour, man.
he's.
That tour was so much fun.
I could see the two of you guys being maybe too much fun. I don't know, but
Well, Hayes is different. He's I didn't know if my jokes landed on him for the first week or two. He was hard to read,
is that
and
right?
well, he internalizes a lot of things,
Yeah,
and then it wasn't until later that I was like, oh, okay, he gets it. He's just a thinker.
yeah, I can see that pensive kind of. Yeah, and actually, the song you were talking about, I was gonna bring up. You were, and I typed in the chat. That part I did see live, what a trooper you were to fill in for the female part. You know, with those.
Uh, well, that's a hell of a singing part, man. And I'm terrible at learning people's lyrics that I don't write. If I write my own, I'll never forget a lyric that I write. But if I can't sing you every word to Sweet Home Alabama right now to save my life, and that's just the way I've always been. And yeah, but those were mighty shoes to fill.
You did it
Oh
well.
man,
I remember that.
thanks very much.
Yeah. So you're coming through. This is 96.9 FM KMRD LP Madrid, New Mexico. We're gonna air this on Sunday, whatever that is. I'm bad with math. The 15th, whatever, Sunday.
Mhm.
And then you're playing from the airing point of this in 2 weeks in Santa Fe at Tumble Root on October 1st. Correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. And you had a gig the other night, right? Did you?
Yeah. Well, I always have gig the other night. But yeah, I played Rhythm and Roots in that was the most recent one now.
Yeah.
Um, where was that? That was in Bristol, Tennessee. And we had a good time. Me and Kelsey Walden, 49 Winchester, and
She's
um yeah, Sierra Hull. It was cool.
Kelsey's a hoot. She's
She's the best, man. Yes.
oh boy, I'm showing my listeners. I showed my oh boy records. Oh, I've heard a few interviews where of Ray Wiley and Hayes on air, and Ray pointing out that Hayes forgets that when they're on air they can't see what he's doing.
That's all right.
Anyway, yeah, that's fun. You've dropped a bunch of the other kind of metaphysical biscuits of nuggets of comments, including what did you just say? I had a gig. I had a gig the other night, every night or something.
Yeah. I have a gig. I had a gig the other night every night. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
We'll create our own reality every day, every night.
That's all we can do, man. It hit me one day. Matter of fact, it was the day that I was writing "Keep 'Em on Their Toes." I
Yeah.
was sitting in the backyard. Maybe I was meditating. I don't know, but I was just staring out across the slough. We lived out the end of this little slough off of Lake Blackshear, which is a channel from the Flint River. And I was looking out through the woods, through the trees, and I was thinking, I was imagining, man, I wish I could just be dropped off in a brand new world that had yet to be discovered and just go live it how I wanted to live. And then it occurred to me that that is this world. And so I choose to go live how I would want to live.
Hmm.
And then I wrote Keep 'Em on Their Toes.
Great song. You have a
Thanks
lot
a
of
lot.
great songs. And I would say you were definitely meditating when I was talking about the TM I do. Uh, I went to the University of Virginia, and the first year I had reverse culture shock because I had to find the people.
Mm-hmm.
The guy from Pavement, Stephen Malkmus, was there, a little older than me, and it is a diverse school, but not on the surface, and not my dorm.
Yeah.
The one culture I didn't have experience with growing up was rich white kids. I didn't know it.
Sorry.
So, anyways, when I learned the TM from a renegade, and I'm not into any of the, you know, whatever cult stuff. I just do it. Basically, it was my point is, it's what you just said you were doing. It was so similar to a little self-help kind of stuff that I had gotten from trying to get those voices out of my head and not hate myself and get through school because I was wasting all this time first year. Blah blah blah.
Uh-huh.
So you were meditating, was my point.
Yeah, that was it, man.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah,
It's important.
yeah. I don't jive with the people that tell you you have to do anything a certain way. That's
No. No, man, well, I think about my grandpa was he would never call it meditating, but
right.
he'd sit out under a pecan tree and he'd stare for hours out
Mhm.
across a cornfield.
Yeah,
And uh that he was meditating. He didn't think he was meditating. And if I said he was meditating, he'd probably be like, "Oh, I'm just staring," you know. And but that's what it was. It was meditation, man. The old folks, they already knew.
right. Oh, it is. It's quieting the noise. you know, particularly in our era, as you mentioned, all that input, you know, sometimes you got to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Although I think the upside of that with the music world is, you know, Kelsey, for example, is a good example of the upsides. Of course, there's downsides of. I'm pretty. I know that's her with some of the social media interaction, and we've had some funny exchanges. You know,
Yeah.
that sometimes it might be their people, but that it just it's too personal to not and and funny. So that's the only way I. But anyway, yeah, side thing. So back to logistics. For one, also let them know it's brentcobb.com, right? The website.
I believe so. I think that's my, I don't even
Actually, no,
know,
I'm
but
gonna
that's
look. You know, it's Brent Cobb.
breadcobbmusic.com,
Yeah,
I think.
.com. And double B in there, right?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. And do you come from a little bit of a musical family, right?
Yeah, everybody picks and plays in my family. And
Yeah.
then I have a cousin of mine, Dave Cobb, who actually, you know, he's sort of a world renowned producer now. Um, we didn't know each other growing up. We met in 2005 or six. And at that time, the only album that he had produced that was sort of known was the Shooter Jennings Put the O Back in Country. And but then he went on to uh, make Jamie Johnson that Lonesome Song album, and then Isbell, Jason Isbell, Southeastern, um, uh, Chris Stapleton Traveler, Sturgill Simpson, Metamodern Sounds, and High Top Mountain. And you know, but yeah, I come from a very musical family.
And your kids pop up on some of your current music, don't they? A little bit, and your wife,
Oh yeah, well
yeah.
they're the muse for sure. They're the
And
muse.
and your wife writes with you, correct?
Yeah, she is a pharmacist by trade. She hasn't practiced since our second child was born, and he's four now. Um, but uh, but she's a brilliant songwriter. She has great taste in music. She's just much. She's highly intelligent. She's much smarter than I am,
Hmm.
and so we write well together. And she writes well without me as well.
I didn't say to agree. Sorry about that.
No, no, it's obvious.
Patina, that's one of your beautiful songs that
Yeah,
is,
that she wrote. Yep.
right?
Yeah, that was one of those times I'd gotten out there and was sort of, I'd been on the road for probably a month and was homesick and, starting to wonder if I was being a good dad and a good husband and I'm gone all the time. And I was sort of out there and she sent me that song. She wrote it a couple weeks prior to this. And she wrote it because she was in that moment where she's going, what am I doing with my life? And she has a line in there that says, all we got is right now. And that's absolutely the truth. My head was in the clouds and she pulled my feet right back down to earth by sending me that song. And
That's
yeah,
beautiful. Yeah, and that's that's a good sort of parallel tie into to the real world air quotes and all that of being in the moment and
absolutely.
yeah, and also if you're worried about money or awards, which I was about to bring up, that's not really being in the moment. That's that you don't know your website. That's totally like sensible. You're not.
Yeah,
You know,
I
it,
guess.
I think for me, in my kind of life, I'm not going to name what I'm about to be talking about, but there's you probably heard of it. Well, whatever. Meow Wolf, and what I said to Shinyribs recently is if you've heard of it, they keep opening more, and that's great, and they pay their artists and all this stuff. It's like this artist collective is. I remember it was a few kids. My point is just that what I've said, and this is what makes us that we can get if everybody can get along but be different. What I said is their dream. They said they wanted to diversify and open these meow wolves all over, and they are. It's not a dream that I understand, but to
Right.
dream and achieve it, So for me, what I joked, it isn't a joke anymore. I'm almost 50. Is although I do love the job I have at the moment, it took a while. is it an artist who doesn't have to do anything else for their living. To me, that's enough success. It's all feed this cat here and
That's what I always say. If I'm keeping the lights on and the youngins fed, then I'm doing all right.
yeah, and you're sharing some great music. You know, I will. I don't mean to keep talking about Hayes, but one of the great things he said, well, I didn't. Nothing's planned before these happen. Um, I have notes that you probably noticed I don't look at. But his first album, Not Sound Well, came up, which was beautiful. But he said that he can live with the fact that he's never done a song just for the money. You know and
Right.
do we
Yeah,
do it?
man.
We do it for love, and it shows those kinds of people. You know,
Yeah, he does it for the love. Yeah, it's
well, we all do.
that's how I feel. I mean, I would you know, I go on if I go on the road for 6 weeks and playing and writing, and then I come home, and then once we get the kids down to sleep, first thing I do, I pick up my guitar and I'm writing a song. You know, it's just what I do, and I know Hayes is that same way, and I'm grateful to be able to pay the bills doing that, and but yeah, I would be doing it regardless for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I is it? Are you an any timer? Are you more of like a quiet of the morning, late at night, and any kind of?
Uh, I used to be more of a late night rider, but now with kids, I can't really because I gotta sleep sometime. But so I just try to pay attention to when the muse hits, you know, and that can be anytime.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think with creativity, I mean, you got to be there to tap into it. But I think it's Paul Simon who said most of his ideas come when he's driving.
Oh
But
yeah, no, I definitely have some then too. Mhm.
oh, actually, I'm glad Paul Simon came up. The what is it that you've been called? The
Oh yeah, Dave named me the redneck Paul Simon. I don't really know what that means exactly, but I think it's a good thing.
It's a very good thing. Yes, we went to his farewell tour, and I'm not from New York at all. But as a not very tall Jewish descent, that's a big compliment. I'm not saying I'm Paul Simon, but I get
Hey man, I take it. I'll take it.
so this is Brent Cobb, who's been with us, and I'm gonna, if you don't mind, send chat you the station ID if you could do that for us in a sec.
Yep.
And Brent is gonna be so it looks like they got you stacked once you get out to the west with your tour, right?
We're hitting it hard. Yeah. I got a
Yeah,
couple of days at home and then we hit it pretty hard for the Southern Star.
and that album
Um
almost out, right?
yep, it'll be out September 22nd. Hey, did you want me to do this liner?
Yeah, and when you do, first I'm going back to speaker mode, and I was gonna say, if you notice me tinkering, I was when you were really getting into it, I was putting it in speaker mode.
Cool.
But yeah, if you can say however you want to identify yourself, and then read that for
Okay.
me, great. I'm gonna
All
hush.
right. Hey, this is Brent Cobb. You're listening to 96.9 FM, KMRD LP, Madrid, New Mexico.
Thank you. The LP throws people off sometimes.
Cool.
So you're going to be Tumbleroot on September 1st, and they can get tickets through that's the Lensic 360 website, or if they go to that
Uh-huh.
Brent Cobb Music Tour part, they can get to it, and
Yep.
it's going to be a great show. Are you? Is it you solo, or what's the logistics?
No, that should be me and full band.
The
It'll be
full
me
band.
and my band. Hmm.
Do you have a band that you've played with a few albums now, or
Oh man, well, you know, things evolve, and this is some of the players have been with me for 10 years in this band, and then some of them been 6 years, some of them just a couple, and but we have yet to make an album with this band, and
okay.
I'm actually looking forward to that for the next album.
The songs I've heard sound great. And did you play with the Smoke a little bit?
Blackberry Smoke.
Yeah.
They sorry, forgive me.
No.
Blackberry Smoke was
Really?
they were the the band for the Adam Hood album that I produced. Adam
Oh,
Hood's a friend of mine, and we did that actually at Capricorn a couple of years ago, and it just so happened to be during a time when the whole world was shut down, and so Blackberry Smoke was not on tour, and they were able to come and be the band for that session.
that's what that was. Oh, and I'm not entirely sure what this meat and potatoes session I stumbled into, but I heard your version. I don't like to say cover because I think it's your take on the beloved. I call John Prine Saint John Prine, and two of your fans and listeners to the show. One of them in particular is Saint Tom Petty. But anyways, your take on "You Don't Know How It Feels." I aired
Yeah.
live just this past Sunday, and I said that I joked. Other than maybe a couple of my karaoke versions, it was the best take of that song I'd ever heard. That was beautiful.
Oh well, thanks. That was rendition of it was one of my old bands, and that was we recorded that in 2018 somewhere in Colorado, and I've always loved that song, and I always put that song on when I pick my kids up from school, and if it's a nice like early spring day or one of those nice weather fall days, I'll roll the windows down when I pick them up, and I'll put that on in the background. I don't tell them I'm playing it; I just have it playing to where
Mhm.
someday when they grow up, not my version but Tom's, and someday when they grow up and Tom Petty comes on, I hope that it will remind them of those real good days, getting picked up from school.
I bet it will. Not to mention the line, "My old man was born to rock." I mean, look at their
Come
dad.
on.
Come on.
Yes, sir.
And the Southern thing. I mean, the Southern Accents album and all that stuff.
Yeah.
We could talk for hours just about that. But let's see. There was one logistical thing. Anyways, so Brent Cobb, who's going to be on tour, and you look stacked for the rest of the year now. I was looking at your site today.
Yep. I'll be out there.
Yeah, and the new album they can get from your site too. Oh yeah, you've got a handful of albums so far. Is that right?
Well, I tell that half joke that it's only taken me 20 years to get to the bottom, and I'm just glad to be here. And so, over the course of almost 20 years, uh, yeah, I have. This will be my sixth or seventh studio album,
So,
and
so I'm sorry.
no, I'm proud of it. I feel confident, you know, all my material. If this is the first time that someone's ever heard of me, there is a deep catalog of material to dig through that I think is all good.
Actually, I agree, and I was gonna say there's no reason not to admit that I hadn't been terribly exposed to or familiar with your music. I have, and I've played your music in the past, but the
Sure.
further I go, the more I do love everything that I come across,
Well, thank you.
and I mean that not just to give you some kind words, but because it's also a wonderful thing at 49 years old or whatever age to discover someone like that that isn't.
I, that's the whole point.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah,
means very much.
yeah. And that you're alive and kicking and at it because you know you can discover. Wait, Led Zeppelin did more than Stairway and zillions of examples.
And no more. Yeah.
Right. So that's a beautiful thing to have discovered and to be able to share. And I know that some of these other folks that have been listening, and I'll carry on playing your tracks. So the buddy, is that label your label? Is
Oh,
it?
buddy.
Yeah. And then there's a connection with that to the 30 Tigers cats. Is that?
Yeah, so 30 Tigers is the distribution company, and then they're really cool over there, David Macias and everybody. And yeah, it's like having, it's my own label, and but they help with distribution, and they have resources to help with like putting an album out or managing a release. And yeah, it's been very cool. Every album I was able to buy back my first album, No Place Left to Leave from 2006. That was my first release. I re-released it in 2019 or 2020, and then every album since, Keep 'Em on Their Toes, the gospel album, the Southern Star album, that
Mhm.
first album, I own those, independently through 30 Tigers, through um, oh buddy.
Great. Well, through your people that helped this happen, and I'm pointing to our chat and our connection here, which has been great. They this morning connected me to some folks from 30 Tigers who are going to keep me with some good music too. So,
Cool.
so thank you for that.
Yeah.
I was going to run with your joke. So was Rock Bottom that Grammy nomination?
No, not yet. That was Shine on Rainy Day. But
Yeah,
yeah, that was uh yeah, I mean, yeah, the beginning of, I guess when I say the bottom, I just mean the beginning of the ladder.
yeah.
And
Joking.
and yeah, it was, Shine on Rainy Day was like the beginning of the second half of my so far career, you
And there's
know.
plenty to come, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, I'll never stop. Yeah. That's
Nope.
what I do.
Yep, yep. Well, thank you so much. I probably got to get going soon, I would imagine.
Yeah, I gotta hit it. My phone is also gonna die. I had like 70% when we got on here, and then now it's down to like less than 10. But
Well,
I
I
enjoyed it. Thanks very much for caring enough to take the time.
well, thank you for the same thing, and I think it's your phone allowed us to have a great conversation, and I think we're going to get some good interaction to it. So signing off. This has been Jules of Metaphysical Biscuit from 96.9 FM with Brent Cobb,
Yes,
and
sir.
and y'all can hear his music on YouTube, wherever else, and get that new album. You can order it at Brent Cobb Music, and it looks like you're covering most of the country. So, as a matter of fact, I know our West Coast Susan listener is going to be seeing you a few days after I will in Oregon.
Oh, good. Well, yeah. That's yeah, we're all over. We'll be all over, and yeah. Thanks, man.
Thanks. Well, hopefully I'll see you in Santa Fe. Let me know if you need anything.
Yes, sir.
And
I'll tell Hayes you say hello as well.
please do. And I'm going to hit stop and then I'll say bye. So
Cool.
thank you for doing this with us.
Yes, sir.